Welcome to my channel. If you're new, I don't normally do this, but I'm celebrating 1,000 subscribers, and I'm using 1920s equipment and gear for an overnight trekking excursion. Now, my subscribers, I gave them the opportunity to choose for me whether it's going to be a motor camp or a trek. Majority said trek, so this is what I'm doing. I also gave them the choice of what they want me to use to cook with. And I gave them the option of a Theros mess kit or a 1915 Boy Scout mess kit. Right now, as I'm making this introduction, making breakfast. And you'll have to wait and see what's cooking in this skillet. Man, this smells good, and it's going to taste even better. So, join me for the ride as we take off from where we were last video. Hi, good morning. Last night was kind of weird because it's the first time I've ever camped out by myself. Now, I've been at reenactments by myself, and that's something completely different than actually being outdoors, camping out in the woods by yourself. Now, here in Ohio, we don't have like big bears and we don't have wolves or anything, but what we do have is the coyotes. We have some bobcats, and there are making a comeback of black bears now. And there's even suspected mountain lions. Now, mountain lions I don't have to worry about in my area because they're a little bit farther south from what I've been seeing. But coyotes and bobcats are something that we do have to be aware of, especially coyotes. Like, we have such a heavy coyote population. There's less and less hunters. There's less and less farmers that are really worried about coyotes because of in my area there's not a lot of dairy cattle. There's some, but if you're just a bean farmer or corn farmer, you're not so worried about coyotes. You got to have livestock to really be that concerned about them. But I digress. So last night, it was really weird because it was a blustery, really windy night, and I kept on hearing various noises. Not sure if they were creaking of the trees. I'm not sure if it was coyote barks, because it sounded like coyote barks from what I've heard before, or if it was possibly turkey of all things. But with the wind blowing, and you know how sound kind of changes and diverts and stuff, not exactly sure what it was, but it was a little nerving, not gonna lie. But the tent, the featherweight tent, the 1920s featherweight tent, this thing did its job, because it also rained last night, and at least my sleeping bag is completely dry. We'll see once we get out what the result is. But the featherweight tent is so small, even for a kid. This thing is small. It's short. So I have a 1910 shelter half, and the poles are a lot, well, not a lot taller, but it's taller. And so for a big guy like me that's 6'1", this is kind of difficult to move around in. Not very comfortable. And also, as you can see, I got a pole right in my face, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. So if I wanted to, I could scoot down and then my feet be pretty much completely staying outside, which wouldn't be a problem because I've got my wood sleeping bag, and the wood sleeping bag was designed, honestly, to be used without a tent. The tent more or less just gives me peace of mind. That's really all it does. Also, I guess a dry place to stick out my head. So it wouldn't have been terrible, but it's just kind of awkward. Really awkward, especially like getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, because I'm at that age. I'm doing that a lot more. You don't need to know that. But yeah, it kept me dry. It's short, and it's really hard to maneuver. So let's get outside. Let's make some breakfast and see what the damage is as far as wind and how much, if anything, is wet. All right. So let's get to it. Good morning. Well, as you can see, the foot of my sleeping bag got pretty wet, but it's only this part here. So, and it's got along the zipper. The nice thing about this wood sleeping bag is that there's a flap on the inside. So even if something like this happens, you would think that the water might get to the zipper, but it doesn't. You know, it keeps your feet nice and dry. Uh, so I love this sleeping bag. I really do. Now, it is, according to my watch, 9:16 in the morning, and the temperature says it's about 38 degrees. So last night it did get down pretty cold, but really didn't notice it because of this. All right, so first thing, we got to make coffee. Now, Horace Kephart, he was more of a tea guy. He suggested having tea because the amount of caffeine was actually more in tea than it was in black coffee. I am not a tea guy. Never have been. I like some Earl Grey, but that's about it. So we're going to get the fire going again here. And luckily, I did keep some wood underneath my haversack last night, so it would stay dry for this. You always think of that. You know, even when the forecast, from what I remember, said it wasn't supposed to rain. I was not expecting rain last night, and it's not raining now. So either I got it wrong or weatherman got it wrong. It doesn't really matter. But always, 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 when you go camping, keep some wood someplace dry. You know, in your tent with you, underneath a tarp. You could even pile boughs or even trash wood on top of your good wood. That way your good wood stays dry. You always got to think of that. All right, let's get to it. All right, now this is something that I don't think I've ever heard any other campcrafter or bushcrafter mention. Depending on how you use your knife for curls and tender, you get different results. If you want thick, fat curls that curl up on itself like that, then you use the meat of your knife, like down here, and you just push. If you want elongated curls, see, like this here, so it's not bunched up on itself quite as much, then you want to use the full length of your knife. Now, I think, from my perspective, having elongated curls works better. So I start at the tip and then I work my way back down. Now with fat wood, it really doesn't matter because the resin in it is what catches, not so much the tinder itself. But if you're using sticks and you're trying to make feather sticks or use the sticks and turn them into tinder, then I think the elongated curls work best. All right, so now we got the fire going, and we're getting some coals in there so we can start cooking breakfast. Still need my coffee, right? So I'm rigging up this system here using my firewall as a hinge. That way I can hang my pot on, and I can raise it and lower it depending on the fire. So what I'm using here is a stick, and it has a couple different shoot-offs or sprouts from the branch. I went ahead and trimmed those back. Now I still need to get rid of this long thing because this is just getting in the way. It's unnecessary, and it'll be a lot harder to remove the pot or adjust it as we need it. So we're going to take our knife here, and we're going to basically beaver chew all the way around it until I break it off. Just like that, pretty easy. Now, test my pot. There we go. I got a couple different settings here. Now the nice thing about this having two little nubs is if I bend it, it may slide off of one, but it's not going to slide off the other. All right, so now we have to adjust the other side to be about the height that we want to cook on. Hey, what I have here is a tripod system. Now, the nice thing about this tripod system is it doesn't require any type of rope, any type of lashings. All you need are some fork sticks, and you lock them in, and you kind of twist, and it's a friction. When I did Civil War reenacting as an infantryman, we did this stacking arms technique called the Kentucky swing. And it's where you take your two bayonets, you put them across, and then you have somebody in the middle, and you swing it out, and it all locks based off of friction alone. So that's the premise of this. Now you see in Horace Kephart's book, and I think Mars's book, and several other campcraft writers, they use a system very similar to this, but they tend to use a heavier pot. Now, since I'm using such a light pot, I don't need a fork stick in the ground to actually counterweight the stick from lifting up. Actually, I need the opposite. I need to lift my stick up a little bit. That way it brings it down closer to the fire. My little aluminum pot doesn't really weigh anything. But you can use the same system inversely by using fork sticks, sticking them in the ground at different heights so that when your pot stick comes up, it catches within there. So you have to hammer them into the ground, like I said, and you can adjust your height based off of that system. This is very similar, but instead, we need to raise it. So now I have my pot stick here. And this is a very fat end. There's a lot of weight down there. So I don't have to worry about my pot lifting this up. We should be good to go. Now, in case you're wondering how I cleaned my pots last night. Now, water can be a very valuable resource. So, what I did is I did what the old scouts used to do. That's documented in the early 1900s manuals, especially the Patrol Leader's Handbook from 1928. Now, in that green bar bill suggests that you take your pots and you scrub it with sod. Now, you can also use ash. I honestly prefer scrubbing it with ash than sod because the ash is already sterile, right? Because it's been in a fire and everything. You don't have to worry about a whole lot of microorganisms and everything like that. So I take a little bit of ash in there and I abrade the stuff off, possibly with a towel if you've got the towel. If you don't have a towel, you can use leaves. But that's what I did last night. And then to finish it off, because water is so valuable, I don't want to have to trek to get water. I put a little bit of water in my pot and I put it over the fire and I boiled it. So everything should be sterile within my pots and pans. Now, let's make some coffee. Okay, I'm going to fill about halfway with water. Then take out my larder. That's where I have my sugar. While I'm in there, take out my bacon that I got. I think we're going to make some stewed apples with some sugar. And since I'm in here, I'll take a piece of that Hudson Bay bread out. It's like a oatmeal already made. Put that in my plate. So we're getting several things accomplished all at once. Tie that back up. I'm not going to use a spoon. I'm just going to eyeball it. And I tend to like my coffee on the strong side anyways. So I'm just going to pour it in. Use my finger to spread it out so it covers the surface of the water. Put my lid on. Make sure it's good and tight. That's what's nice thing about these old Boy Scout mess kits, is these lids really ratchet down, so to speak. Okay. So now we can stick that on the heat, and I think I'm going to raise my stick just a little bit more. That way it gets to the fire and it boils a little bit quicker. And I'll probably build up this fire just a little bit more too, to help out. So if you're not a fan of these old Scout mess kits, these things, in my opinion, are pretty awesome. Now they are aluminum. A lot of people will get worried about being aluminum. Now there's a difference in modern aluminum compared to historical aluminum as well. But like this, you can use this frying pan, fan your fire. You don't have to get down and breathe smoke. That's pretty sweet. Now let's get into that temperature. With this wool, honestly, this coat's unnecessary, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off. All right, now let's get our bacon on. Now, one thing to remember with aluminum, though, is that it heats up a lot faster than steel. So instead of putting the skillet on, especially with the high flames, on some sticks, I'm actually going to hold it. That way I can adjust it. Look at that. Good, delicious bacon. Now, the old Scout books and a couple other campcraft books, but especially the Scout ones, when they talk about cooking on a fire, keeping an area on your fire that's just coals on one side and flame in another is really handy. So I think that's what I'm going to do. That way I don't overcook my bacon. I like my bacon floppy. So we're going to put the coals right here in this corner. Now you can tell temperature by keeping your hand. If you can keep your hand there for about 3-4 seconds, then you're sitting at 350 degrees. This is much, if I get it really close on Mississippi, see, that's about 2 seconds there before it got too hot for me. So it's above 350 degrees right there in that corner with just the coals, not including the fire. So that's more than enough heat to cook my bacon. But being off of direct, it's not going to, possibly burn, hopefully. Just got to keep an eye on it. Meanwhile, it's a good time to eat some of this Hudson Bay bread. I'll bring it back when at least the bacon's done. Mmm. Do you smell that? That is delicious bacon right there. Now you might be surprised, maybe not, but this little fire that I've got going on right here is throwing off so much heat. Like I honestly have to kind of back away from it. I'm glad more and more that I brought my scout shovel. I didn't know if I'd really use it. I thought I'd use it mainly just for digging the fire pit, but I have found so many more uses for this thing. It's quite a handy piece of kit. Now make sure to check out the video about it if you haven't seen it before. Check the archive. I think I did it last year, so it's in that Camp Craft series. But man, if you can get yourself one of these little shovels, I think it's the bee's knees. Okay, so it looks like our bacon's done. Eggs are peeled. Now, all we got to do is check on our coffee. There we go. All right, there you go. That's good, delicious black coffee. All right. Now that we got our coffee, we got to put it in a cup. Put a little bit of cold water in it, cool it down. Now, I could use my itty bitty cup. I'm going to use my big cup. And we're going to put just a little bit of cold water in there, and that's going to help the grounds to settle. Now, I could have also used eggshell. They say if you put a eggshell in there while your coffee's cooking, the ground settle to the bottom. Never done that, to be honest. I found that the little bit of cold water does the trick for me. It cools it down a little bit faster so I can drink it. All right, now we got that sludge. Oh. Got some coffee. Put a little bit of sugar in it, a little bit of my powdered milk. Now, here is a trick that the old timers used to do. I think I mentioned it in my last video. If not, here you go. The old timers used to tell us to keep some adhesive plaster, which is really just medical tape, in our kit to seal up our tins so they don't come undone. I thought that was a pretty brilliant idea. And since it's period for our 1920s impression, that's exactly what I did. is the duct tape of its time. Right there. Even put it on my sugar. Now my coffee tin, it has a nice tight seal. My sugar and creamer tin, not so much. Now, how much sugar should we put in? Let's do about 2 teaspoons. See how that goes. Now, if you're laughing at me because I'm not drinking black coffee, each to their own. In the 19th century, during the American Civil War, most of the people took their coffee with cream. And soldiers who ended up going to the Civil War, that was kind of a hard thing for them to transition to. Now, of course, they did, because you do what you got to do. But Borden's sweetened condensed milk came out, and it was extremely popular among soldiers to go to the sutler and get them some. The microphone moved on me, so I had to adjust it a little bit. Make sure you could hear it. That's the thing about doing it outdoors. There's a lot more you have to take in consideration when recording a video. It's kind of hard to try to think of everything, at least in my studio, if you will. Everything's kind of in its place, and you take a lot of that for granted. All right, so there's our coffee. We got our bacon, we got our eggs. Now we have to prepare our stewed apples. Now for stewed apples, there's lots of different recipes for it with the ingredients that I brought with me. Now we're going to use some of this bacon grease. If you never had a little bit of bacon and sweet apple, it's really, really good. I suggest you give it a shot. I'm going to pour this excess grease off. We just want just a very thin coat of it. Then we're going to take our apple, we're going to take our pocket knife right here, and we're going to cut it into slices. Now you might also be wondering, why do you need grease? Well, because we're going to fry these up just a little bit. And if you don't have grease, since we're using some sugar, it'll caramelize on us and it won't work quite right. So we got to have some type of oil. And bacon's what I got for my oil. Woo-wee! Boy, is that getting hot. I'm doing it on my daggone it. Apple got a little bit of dirt on it. I don't really want to sacrifice my water, so I'm just going to let this one go. Just got to be more careful. Now, I've ate plenty of dirt in my day, but I still try to avoid it. So we got our apple core we can chew on and get a little bit more nubs off of it. Spread our apples in a nice thin layer like that. Try not to crowd them. You want to give each apple its own space. Then we want to get our cinnamon and our sugar. So we already had sugar out. What do we do with it? Do we put it away? So we found our sugar. Now we're going to sprinkle the sugar on the apples. We're going to take our treenware of cinnamon. We're going to put that on there. Just a little tap, tap, tap. Just like that. Now, you can also do this and have some rice cooked up and ready, and my gosh, having like a kind of like a rice pudding type taste to it. So we got our cinnamon, our apples, our sugar, and we need just a little bit of water. Not a whole lot. Okay, so there we go. Just a little bit of water. Now we're good to go. Now we're also going to use a little bit of flour. We're going to thicken it up, kind of make like a pudding out of it. But while that's doing its thing, we get to eat breakfast. Pretty good. Eggs, breakfast, oatmeal, stewed apples. You can't beat this kind of trail meal. Nope, nope, nope. I'll bring you back when the apples get ready for the next step. Welcome back. It doesn't take very long for those apples to cook up. And all you're trying to do is really soften them, caramelize them a little bit. My last piece of bacon. So the apples that you got here, you see how they're kind of yellow now? They're not so much white. Want to make sure to toss them, turn them. You don't want them to dry. You don't want to get like that weird caramel crust in the bottom of your pan. You can use a fork, to test how soft they are. So you want them pretty soft. So these ones still need probably about 5 more minutes, give or take. Keep an eye on it. Okay. Our apples are all cooked up. They're nice and soft. Now, we're going to put a little bit of flour on them. And might put a little bit more sugar. We'll see. So we got our flour. And you might be wondering, well, why are you doing a flour? Because I am trying to basically make a pudding in a way. So I'm putting a little bit of flour. And then we'll add some more sugar. And some water. And we're going to stew these for a little bit until they thicken up. So I got a little bit of flour just on the surface. Put a little bit of water. Just enough to cover all the bottom. That's it. Just enough to cover all the bottom. Can always add water. Can't take it away. You have to cook it away if you do that. Add some more sugar. Like so. And put it back in the fire. I need to add some more fuel. Now, on a cold day like this, having something like this isn't really ideal because you're getting that warmth inside your body to help your core temperature. The sugar in it is giving you energy. The flour, you got your calories. It gives you comfort. And there's a lot to say about comfort and morale on being outdoors, especially if it's wet and cold. Having something like this that gives you that comfort and that morale boost can be really nice. Tell you what, the woods look more inviting now that I'm eating this. My mom would be happy because I'm eating my fruits and vegetables. If you dig up that sauce right there, the brown sauce, I'm telling y'all, cinnamon, sugar, flour. Think of like a wet cinnamon roll. Think of that. Wet cinnamon roll. And that little bit of bacon grease, because we poured off most of it. It was only just a very thin layer. Gives it just enough salt to balance out that sweetness. Salt really is, the spice of the earth. I watch that Alone series all the time with my kids. And I feel so bad for those poor people in that series. It's not something I would do. Because, they're eating all these different things just to try and survive. But they have no seasoning whatsoever. And that seasoning, at least to me, is what makes or breaks a meal. Especially since it seems like they're trying to eat fish and meat and other things. And they're eating plants without seasoning. Oh, no thank you. Yes, I know what you're saying. There are wild herbs out there to give some type of seasoning. Man, it's just not the same. Especially without just a little bit of salt. It really brings out the flavor of things. So now I've got this like syrup gravy that's left. You're darn right I'm going to eat that. So good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about done on this trekking trip. If you've made it this far, please click like if you've liked it. And maybe I'll have some more time, opportunities to do these type of videos. They don't come by very often for me. I'm a pretty busy guy teaching, and with my scouts, that's usually when I spend my weekends, taking my scouts out camping and teaching them outdoor skills. But if you stuck with me this far and you've liked this video, please click like, that way people find it. And if you're interested in any of the recipes that I made, or ones like it, that's perfect for the outdoor enthusiast, and the camp crafter or bush crafter, then consider sending me an email. My email is in the box below. It's also in the description. And I've got a cookbook that's coming out at the end of this month. It costs $25 if you buy it on the 31st. However, you can pre-order it for $20 and you'll get some extra benefits with it. But all the recipes are from 1920s, 1930s, or earlier books and magazines and journals, things like that I've collected and compiled for this period cookbook. And I'm field testing it. They're all really good. And if you are one of my patrons on Patreon, then you also get a few exclusives as well. So send me an email if you're interested in it. Now next week, we're going to be talking about a really handy artifact that was gifted to me. And I used it this weekend. It's pretty nice. And I actually have a video exclusively for my patrons on Patreon that's coming out about it actually being used, and talking about it being used in the outdoors this weekend. And so there's that as well. Now, if you're interested in my 1915 Boy Scout sets, and if you got a set or you've had a set and you're trying to figure out, well, what's the differences between all of them? Well, then you want to check out the video here, because I did a video a while ago and it was all about those sets. Okay? I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss out to your loved ones, and I'm going to see you guys next time. Thank you so much for all your support. Take care.